fl-impunt spiċċajt.
Mount Carmel. 3 occasions and all because I wanted to commit suicide.
Tallimt li inti wkoll bipolar.
We were taking certain pills which were directed for depression, the California rocket fuel. I would try them for the first week, nothing. You increase the dose, second week, and on the third week, I shot out of bed and didn't look back for another 4 days.
Nirridafaw najdu kemm għal-buzz Minn waħda neħilbu tnejn Ma nifmux dwar x'qed irednu Nistaqsu kif u x'fatta u fejn Il-podcast tal-ġar Fuq il-podcast tal-ġar
Mela, tlaqna? Merħba, nilqakom għal dan l-episodju tal-podcast. Illum il-persuna li se nkun qiegħed impoġġi kollu konversazzjoni magħha u ħabib u kollega u jismu Robert Gruppetta. Xi snin ilu Robert Gruppetta kellu djanjosi tal-kundizzjoni ta' bipolar. Sewa qabel hekk konna naħsbu li kellu ADHD u depressjoni insomma, u miegħu ħanitħattu dwar x'jiġifieri din l-iskoperta għalih, kif jgħix din il-kundizzjoni kuljum, kif ħajtu tiebet meta kellu djanjosi u min huma n-nies importanti illi enuh biex insomma jinnegozja dak iż-żmien diffiċli ħafna. Ħatkun inwedkom konverzazzjoni bħalma dejjem ma' Robert interessanti ħafna. Qabel ma nibda nirringrazzja numru ta' azzjendi illi lilna jgħinuna biex dan il-proġett inkunu nistgħu nagħmluh, dawn huma il-Browns, il-Vinja Capricci, grazzi l-ISS, il-Maple, il-bibtana tal-Maple, grazzi l-Afex Media tal-SEO, grazzi Kutriko, wellbees.mt, jekk m'intix tagħmel ix-xjent il-wellbees.mt, ma nafx inti tagħmel b'high-tech, iffaċilita high-tech, wellbees.mt. Grazzi wkoll il-Garmin kif ukoll 9966425 u għan-numru ta' Derek Meets. Qabel ma nagħlaq infakkar patreon.com/John Malli jekk tixtiequ tkunu parti minn din il-komunità kbira tagħna, tkunu hawnhekk preżenti fostna. Tajjeb infakkar illi meta tkun Patreon inti il-podcast tista' tarah qabel kulħadd nhar ta' ħadd fil-waqt jekk m'intix Patreon insertajt xi naqa' ammil jew xi naqa' għażin għax m'għandekx aptit tmur bħal fuq il-Patreon tagħmel subscribe. Joħroġ kull nhar ta' ħamis fuq il-YouTube. Insomma, tal-inqas tina like u subscribe fuq il-YouTube. Ara tlaqna jien u Robert Gruppetta. An ADHD guy and a bipolar guy walk into a podcast. What happens? That's what happens. Mela, Rob, illi nafek snin naħseb isajdu nafek.
It has been, yes.
U speċi dejjem kontentni nagħmel grafs u fitxu d-data u nagħmlu riċerka l-podcast ma se taħdem magħna. Però ma' żmien tallimt li inti wkoll bipolar.
Anke jien f'dak iż-żmien tallimt li kont bipolar.
Ġifieri dak iż-żmien meta tallimt jien li inti kont bipolar, inti kont qed titgħallem ukoll bipolar.
You were one of the first few funny messages I sent, which were ensued by a couple of more. Listen, I discovered this about myself. Do you know anyone who can help me because it's a bit crazy? So it was about 2.5 years ago, and my dates are terrible, so it might be 3, but not 2.
Kif skoprejt?
It was a discovery by accident, right? So I had been treating myself for a couple of years since I was 16 for depression and ADHD. This is a very, very, very common route for someone to discover that they have what's called manic depressive or bipolar. So they're treated
Manic depressive or bipolar?
Oh, sorry, manic depressive. At the time, manic depressive, sorry, I found out was bipolar, it's the same word. Okay. Many people, before they discover it, think that they're ADHD and depressed. Why? When you're a mania, you think it's because of ADHD, and the depression is thankfully depression. Easy to identify. And I had been taking quite a lot of treatment for years, changing psychologists, psychiatrists, got to a point where I was doing what's called ECT, electroshock therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Nasib darba semmili Pamela kienet, semmili xaġġura, fakkarni xini.
Basically, it's when you used to see the old movies and they grab someone, tie him down, put something in his mouth and pass electricity. Nowadays, it's much fancier. You go to a hospital, they give you anesthesia, and you go out basically being electrocuted. But it should help with depression. They're not sure why.
But żgur ma dix kif tajt, rudimentali daqs kemm kienet qabel.
I don't think they go to it as a first resort anymore, no. In fact, it's a last resort. It has quite a lot of side effects. One of the most common known ones is loss of short-term memory. It's not that you use it forever. It's hard to know. Well, yes, for sure. So at the time I was dating someone, I remember, And she picked me up after ECT. I go out and I'm like, I know her. I know I speak to her, but I can't feel anything. And not because can't feel anything like you fall in love. Like there's no memories to latch on to. There's no... But other than...
Did you remember she was your girlfriend?
Yeah, of course. In fact, you don't lose it completely. But the thing is, you'd never know how much you lose, right? So if I'm going home and I lost my memory of what I did last week, no one's going to tell me that I had that memory. So most of it is unknown, and some of it you get to know it through stupidity. So someone will tell me, we just spoke about this, or show me a photo, look, you're here. But it wasn't too extreme. I don't think it had too much of a detriment on me. But
Kemm dom ta' dejbija, mela? Ta' 16 ta' li kellek l-ewwel diagnosi ta' ADHD u depression?
We had 16, I started realizing something is wrong with the brain. So I started going to psychologists.
So,
The psychologist thought a psychiatrist is probably better here. When I compare myself to anyone else, let me say Julian, for example, and I see how his brain functions and mine doesn't function as good on a day-to-day basis. So am I disabled from the get-go? Well, yeah, I guess so. Day-to-day, then you learn how to get around it in ways. Sometimes they're pretty, sometimes less.
okay. So, mela, let's start again. We're from kind of like
16 white arrow
16
time, dak iż-żmienek.
white arrow time.
In summary, I went from a nerd to San Luigi,
Sewa.
glasses, spiky hair, slipknot, to junior college, maybe a month, and then white arrow, where...
Donna tifel daħal issa kif daħal il-junior college tifel tiegħi.
To be fair,
Sperajti li
many
xkedet
people
għax
who went to
ġizzu.
white arrow are nowadays accountants, lawyers, etc. So it's not like everyone who's there turned out to be bad. Most of them, in fact, turned out more than fine. Then there was me. But for me, it was just a new experience, right? Going from being a nerd, San Luigi, all boys school, not having friends, to suddenly in there with who I used to see, I still do, as the cool guys, and they're treating me as one of them, which
Tkolkom ma'
was
Daniel.
as weird as Daniel Tatus. But that came after, yeah.
Iktar tard.
Yeah, Pizza by Luca.
U dak ta' pizza baj. Għax int kont taħdem miegħu il-pizza bajluka kif kien?
Yeah, that's how we met, in fact.
Mela.
It was an interesting.
U ta' 16, ġviri, wasalt il-junior college u bdejt ndun li hemm xi ħaġa li hija problematika bil-mod li taħseb, xiex kell kollok anzjetà,
I was never too anxious, luckily, but mostly going to depression and bad places on the regular without seeing any pattern. So if I see a pattern and I'm feeling bad, I can solve it, right? Because I can prevent what's happening before. But when I'm in the middle of a football game and suddenly I want to go jump, or I'm smiling a lot, I'm happy about life, and suddenly bullets, I want them to be in my head. At first you don't know it's wrong, right? Because no one tells you you're not meant to think this. You think,
Is this literal daħli għattajt issa?
yeah. I mean, I speak about suicide very frankly, right? I don't go in a corner and cry.
Ma li tkun qiegħed għaddej b'logħba futbol li ġeneralment hija pjuttost xi ħaġa li tkun taħseb dwar il-logħba, but forsi wara isu tirrifletti għax telaq kulħadd id-dar.
To be fair, in the middle of a football game, I'll sometimes still think about life. Like football is quite not easy in that space. Aliyah, and I'm quite a lazy person. So if I'm in attack, I ain't running back. So if they're at the back attacking, I have a couple of seconds.
U dik il-pawza tik moment għal-riflessjoni esistenzjali.
Ma esistenzjali fis-sens look at myself and go, okay, at the moment, all of the benefits in my life, all of the good things, all of the bad things, not account, right? Because I have more good things sometimes, but in general, unajt il-bilanċ fejqijat. And I say...
But da jisa pjuttost razzjonali dal-li għattamet.
Yes, in fact, my suicidal thoughts are sometimes in my head semi-rational. They're never 100% right rational, because you can always solve it. But like when you're manic, you think you can do anything. Over there, I think I can do nothing. So if I'm in the middle of a football game, my brain will go through a series of things where I'll blanked out. And it decides that this is the time I'm going to, oh God, like my brain. Like I still keep playing. Like I can still interact with people nowadays, but inside.
But now you can't. But when it started happening, your first recollection of it happening,
it was like in my 16s. I used to cry all the time like an idiot. Yeah, of course. And I used to associate it with bad things. So I like have a relationship that didn't go well. And in the months after, whatever goes wrong, I'm like, because of that. It has to be because of that. Because obviously you try to rationalize it. So if I'm seeing people around me not sad, or not as sad, and nothing is really going wrong in my life, I'm sad. So the logic there is off. So if the logic is off, then a solution has to be there, and it needs to be there. And it continued up and down, like I said, up until 2 years ago, which so that will jump between stories. Started off like that with pills.
But wait, before we get to 2 years ago.
Yeah.
All the while, għaddej inti dan il-fluctuate, l-oscillazzjoni bej.
Like most of my friends will, when I told them, many of them were like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Alfej, why do you think that they said that?
Because the ones who know me well, I share my bad moments with them. So my closest friends, for example, will know my deepest despairs properly. My wife nowadays, the rest of the world obviously won't. And they also know my driven character who, if there is a concrete wall and they want to go behind it and they don't have tools, I'm the guy you call because I'm going to keep on going. I don't know how. Like I'll start and then figure it out, I guess. And that is usually an opposite person. You usually say dak il-bniedem kull ma tih jagħmel.
Jew dak għażien.
Exactly. In fact, I like to say it even at the office that I'm quite a lazy guy, right? And I nowadays have learned to work with it as much as I can. But yeah, it's, I guess, bipolar, whoever thought of the word really knew that there's going to be some of this jazz happening where it's two things.
It-tip ta' bipolarity li għandek inti. Ja, ma nafx, hemm xi kategoriji differenti tagħhom dal-bipolar.
There's a whole spectrum, which I don't know by heart, but the most common ones are 1 and 2. 1 is the most severe. So let's say I'm going to try to think of situations that didn't actually happen. A person might end up naked running in the street because of a manic episode, perhaps because he thinks that he can lift cars. It can be that bad, that's 1. So those are the ones that last for days, sometimes weeks, and the troughs and the bottoms are much stronger. And 2, I'm in between them. So I'm a low 1, high 2. So
you're low 1, high 2.
Yeah. So that means...
Okay. X'imkien bejn it-tnejn?
Il-bniedem minn ħsieb mhux wisq aktar minn xadina bla sur.
U l-gażinerina inqas xadini u iktar nemmin.
Għalek, kull narda ġimgħa flaxija fejn id-dibattu minn kollox.
Rejt kurrenti, storja, politika.
Laqwa li ħsieb huwa stan naqreb li l-verità.
Il-każin kull narda ġimgħa flaxija fid-29 fuq Talkies.
Can you describe il-highs tiegħek kif ikun?
It's only in the last 2 years that I know them a bit better, because before I just thought it's me having fun, right? So in my head, in fact, most of my life, I used to see all these things of me doing a lot of work and say, oh yeah, you just have to sit in a room and like concentrate to do something. I don't know why people qed jagħmlu ħaġeb. And the highs are different. So sometimes the last big high, which is when I had realized, manifested in 4 days of me not sleeping, which sounds doable, right? Many people can do 4 days not sleeping. But when you do not get an inch of tiredness, and when I say not tired, I mean, let me think of things I can say without my wife going, oh, God, Rob. But I would do maths, theoretical maths, till 4 o'clock in the morning, learning new videos, which I could barely understand 10% of what they're saying. And with an A3 paper in front of me, I would keep going. And then suddenly I'd get horny at 2 in the morning while doing maths, and think it's also okay to wake up people and tell them. But
how many people, Rob? How many people?
Just the one in the household, thankfully.
Just one in the household. And so you were going through an intermittence of
maths.
Lovemaking and maths.
It sounds much more filmic than it is, right? Because I was sitting on the floor like an idiot with a laptop, just trying to figure out, for example, Gödel's rules or other mathematical complex things, which even till nowadays I read them and I go, I still find them interesting, but what on earth was I trying to figure out?
Right.
Like, I remember...
But dak il-punt kun taħseb li qed tifhem dak li qed taqra.
I knew I wasn't understanding, but I knew brute force would get me there. Fis-sense, if I read it enough times, the next time I think of that word, these 10 words have to come to mind. And from those 10 words, I have to know what's happening. The thing was with this time, so the last
Kont imma
one...
verament qed tagħmel kont verament qed tifhem iktar imma by virtue
Yeah,
of...
by the end of it, for example, nowadays I can explain to you the video of Keith Devlin and the history of maths. He did a 6-speech Stanford series, 3 hours each, which if I play it at home, my wife will get angry. If she hears Keith Devlin, she's probably one of the few people who will recognize his voice and have an emotional outburst out of it, because I was driving
Għalfejn rabja?
crazy with it. I'm like, look, 3,500 years ago, they invented the trebuchet and maximized it. That's crazy. They didn't have calculus. Like even now when I say it, I get excited. But if I say it to my wife now, she's going to still get angry, right? She still hasn't
Rabja
understood.
x'taħseb li jista' jkun
Yeah,
li
yeah, she
tisimgħu
thinks
u
I'm
terġa'
going-
tibda.
Like me being excited now is super normal, and a mathematician would just get as excited, right? But at the time, I wasn't a mathematician, and now I'm not. So sometimes she gets worried that my excitement is not justified. And that is where I guess the ruler has to come out.
Do you ever worry that sometimes your excitement is not justified?
All the time. Like each time I smile, each time I laugh, each time I do something to someone, it is, for now, always in the back of my mind. Like, am I justified? Am I laughing too much? In fact, sometimes people get to know me in the beginning and they're like, this guy is quite quiet. Like, he doesn't show emotion. And I do. But I'm so cautious of it that for me, I know it's not a slippery slope, but I don't want to have the risk. Like, it's such a thing that's always in your mind that you just always want to make sure like you're being normal.
Right. Imma hija kalibrazzjoni soċjali biex ħadd ieħor ma jgħidux għal kemm jitħaq
Not yet, how he gets excited about everything.
Għalhekk hija kalibrazzjoni soċjali mhux li tibża li jekk ħatibda tieħu wisq gost.
No, I've learned.
Terġa' taqbad.
So during the hypomanic episode,
Tinniżel
exactly after, when I was trying to really properly calibrate, I used to look at a plant made out of plastic and get excited. Tipo, I'll be like, I can make plants like that can't be too expensive. And I know that sometimes this happens, but when it happens to everything you look at, it is very tiring. In fact, I sat down on a sofa looking at a television, which I didn't switch on too much for about 2.5 months after. But yeah, nowadays, to myself, I still like to get excited about things. To others, I control what I'm excited about around people. Like around you guys, it's always increasing, and I'll continue to increase the volume. Around other people, it will just be about the normal things, I guess.
Okay, so għaddejt minn dan il-periodu fejn kont minn għalik, waqt li kont għaddej bil-periodu tal-ADHD.
Yeah, before.
Ovvijament, fl-istess ħin il-tabib qed il-mediċina, il-psikjatra qed il-mediċina, qed jgħid għandek l-ADHD u depressjoni.
Of course.
U l-mediċina tad-depressjoni. One, x'tib ta' mediċina kienet itik, u tu x'tib ta' effett kienet kollha fuqek?
Well, the Ritalin is the one that I'll speak of most because I've been with it for quite a long time, so since I was about 20, and that to me really helped. It was like a mini miracle drug back at the time. So at university, I went in as a mature student, 23, thinking I'm going to be mature and concentrate. Didn't happen really at all. So then I turned to ADHD. So I'd be before an exam, a week late.
You turned to Ritalin?
Yeah. As in 6, 7 a day, crushing them, biting them, anything to make them work
6,
harder.
7 a day. 6, 7 tal-5 milligrams?
There's exactly different pills. Exactly.
So 6, 7 tal-5 milligrams, ġifiri 35
Wait, those weren't always prescribed in the sense that I never self-prescribed because I always had them. But the dosage, I took it with a pinch of salt, right? As many people, I think, sometimes occasionally do.
But for you, was it occasional?
I would have a period of exams where it's occasionally every day. So I would need to take every day. Throughout life, sometimes I'd be enough. And a job when I tisma, palissa, jgħet neddeja, jgħet ta' bizli, jew mux għet nara sew, and I'll take. Nowadays, almost never, but only because of the bipolar. Like the pills don't do well. But at the time, it was when I felt like, and I didn't really have a pattern or stuck to it. So
Ma kellekx protokollu ta' jtisma' kuljum ħanieħu.
No. Even
7 jitqasmu 2, 3.
Antidepressants, I'd spend 2 months at max on them. Obviously, I see they're not working, I think, and I just phase them out on my own. And then I'll get bad again and go again.
So, u fl-istess ħin qed tmur għand il-psikjatra, tmur għand għat-terapija.
Yeah.
So,
psychologists maintained them quite regularly, thankfully. Somehow, my brain told me that that's very good, and I always enjoyed them. The pills, not so much. I mean, nowadays, yes.
That's your idea of recreation?
No, but it's definitely very fruitful for someone who needs someone to stop their brain, and they're not used to it. Like, I'm used to people getting entertained when I go fast. With a psychologist is going to stop you, and I might not get entertained, obviously. And I found that very helpful. to do myself as well.
Dik ċaġa li kontatlek nasib l-ewwel.
Yeah. Well, we've spoken a bit about them before, and indeed.
Like I found myself because I like to move fast as well. You
Yeah,
like to move
I
fast as
think
well.
so.
U niftakarni, għaddejn etnej gas down. U f'taqgħodu ngħid li għalti naparlaw gas down, imma gas down għax sija. U ħriġ mill-kamra biex imur nagħmel kafe. U kif ħriġ mill-kamra għandu ngħid x'għadu kif ġara. U rġajt tħalt jiena fil-kamra. Għatlek naħseb jiena inti perikolużi.
Yeah. And that was why. Oh, okay. And then I just heard you say it, and I'm like, okay.
Le, u fil-fatt meta nkun madwarek nkun konxu biex kemm jista' kun ma nafax il-gas.
And I try to do the same as well.
Kollox bil-mod.
For now.
Għax jekk nitilqu naħseb fl-imkien.
Will be interesting. Definitely.
Il-ħefa tista' tkun.
Not always great
Not always
directionally,
great.
but volume-wise, I think.
U naħseb recreationally naħseb nagħdu ħafna gost. Darba morru.
Well, one day it has to happen, but we're postponing it a lot.
Yes, for the time being we need all our limbs. Żur vini e kapriċi by Abram ġewwa Għawdex għall-lifjen ġobnijiet laħmijiet imbejjed kif ukoll wieħed mill-whiskies favoriti tiegħi il-Jericho tal-Lost Distillery. Idħol www.viniekapriċi.com. Għamilt il-periodu tiegħek tal-ADHD bil-Ritalin. Kemm dom tuħu Ritalin?
Till about 2 years ago, about. So the week before I had the hypomanic episode, I was still taking quite regularly.
Was that the first hypomanic episode that you had li konta tamal il-mezz?
I think it's the worst one. I doubt it's the first one. But when I was younger again, I used to think this is just my character. So at random, for example, let me just give an example. I would be on the way to buy a car with money in my pocket for a deposit. Midway going there, I decide that I don't need a car, but I need a really fast bike. And by the time I change direction, I've called the guy, told him I'm not coming, so da konti l-morandu dejjem ħanoħodha dil-Megan. But yeah, no, literally I left home saying finally after about 10 years of me with bikes, I'm going to get a car. And by the end of the day, I had a bike, a bigger bike than I had before. So there were a lot of them. I think at the time, especially...
Ma dak mhux hypomania, dak huwa...
Eżatt.
Impulsiveness tal-las biex, da?
With graphs, when it comes to bipolar, it's sometimes all the time. So if I get excited about something, that's going to not amplify necessarily, but I'm going to think, I trust myself. If I'm getting excited, I probably have thought about this before, so it's not necessarily bad. When you're in hypomania, you really are sure of yourself. So this time, for example, it was more amplified, by the way, because I thought I had solved depression. We were taking certain pills which were directed for depression. They're called the California Rocket Fuel, venlafaxine, and a pill called Mirap. And basically these two pills were what set me into hypomania. But they were as a last resort before I do.
Kienu last resort għal depression.
To go to ketamine next. So it is.
Biex jissolvi id-depressjoni.
So in total it was the pills when I was younger. Then in a couple recent years I had started TMS as well. TMS is transcranial magnetic stimulation. So there you go to Mount Carmel. I think it was every day or 2 days. And you just stay in a machine up, tipo, and they put some raggi in your brain. That didn't work, so I went to ECT, which is usually the heaviest hitter. In fact, when I used to go to hospital, it's usually me and old people around me who are going to do it. Hi guys. Smiling, funnily enough, so which shows you the absurdity of it all, but here we are.
The absurdity there, my li kuna kid, bisma
No, me, I'll be like, all right, in the ECT,
Kemm il-darba għamilta l-ECT?
About 5-6 times, I think.
Mela, hija xaġa li meta tagħmilha tweġġa'?
No, you'll be under anesthesia, general anesthesia.
Iraqduk?
Yes, of course.
Iraqduk hawn bil-maskra, jtuk il-maskra u torqod? Jew tuk injection u torqod?
I'm sure they gave me injections more than once when I had the Venflon. I would have been at hospital. But il-maskra ġili tawni wkoll, I remember them telling me count down and you plach. And I used to really try resist it and say I'm going to get to 5 seconds.
Mhux possibbli, mhux fattibbli.
Well, I don't know. I never managed that.
Mela, u bat mortu u kont tagħmel l-ICT l-ICT 5 darbiet.
And then we said...
Kien hemm xi esperjenza tal-ICT li kienet partikolarment
different.
Iktar naf li tlift iktar mill-memorja.
No,
li-
because like I said, you never know how much memory loss you have. Like if I've lost 3 years of when I was younger, jifir I
Li forse ħassejtek iktar dizorientat, illi forse tlift anka
you don't lose that
konoxxenza
much.
tal-
No. So
Mhux
even,
daqshekk.
no. It would be specific parts.
L-intervent kemm idum?
I don't know. I used to go in there at about 8, għax mater day tells you to go in there early and but tidħol bil-mod and leave at about 3. But it would only take about 10 minutes probably in there. I'm sure they don't shock me for more than, even that sounds a lot to be fair, but I should have researched this one day, but I didn't. I just presented myself and they did the rest.
So, right xi benefiċċji minna dal-biċċa xogħol?
No, that's why we stopped it, in fact. And we went to this treatment, what I told you, which is just coined as the California rocket fuel.
So, ġiri għamiltu ICT, California, ICT, TMS,
TMS first, ECT, and then
California Rocket Fuel,
Exactly.
u jgħidu l-California Rocket Fuel għax għandu din it-tendenza.
Yeah, I think it was in about either 94 or 2004. There was someone who had a study and found that these two separate drugs, when you put them together, there's that famous saying, the combination of these two is greater than.
Yeah.
And honestly, when he told me to try it as a last resort before going to ketamine, one, I knew what ketamine was for various reasons. And two, I was fed up with pills at that point. That's why I was so happy with the ECT. I'm like, this is a heavy hitter. It has to work. But I trust my psychiatrist this one a lot. And I'm like, okay, let's try them. And we tried them for the first week, nothing. You increase the dose. Second week, on the last day, I felt a tingling in my spidey senses. And on the third week, I shot out of bed and didn't look back for another 4 days.
Apex Media huma esperti fil-kamp tal-SEO għal snin sħaħ huma għenu l-klienti tagħhom sabiex jitilgħu fil-quċċata ta' tfittxija tal-Google jekk inti qed tfittex outreach links, PBN builds, konsulenzi u kwalunkwe xorta ta' servizzi relatati ma' SEO mela kellem l-Apex Media.
So, it starts, u bdejt tagħmel il-ment insomma u tqajjem il-mara. Kien hemm punt f'daw l-4 tiem illi bdejt tajt isma'
This is not wrong. This is not right.
Dix mhux normali.
Yeah. At first, I thought, oh wow, I solved depression finally. It's these pills. So I didn't tell Gabby at the time because obviously she had seen me. I had told her it's been years. So suddenly me going up with her, it's not solved. It doesn't make sense. Even in my head, nothing can be solved so quickly. So I kept it semi to myself, although it doesn't seem like it. But at first, that's what I thought, and that's why I didn't really hold back from all this craziness, because I thought, imagine this is me happy. I can just sit down and concentrate. I can be happy throughout the day. But no, on the first and the fourth day, when she came in back home looking suspicious and told me...
On the fourth day?
Yeah. She's a nurse, so she started realizing something was off quite quickly.
So?
She didn't tell me anything, probably out of fear that I'm going to tell her, listen, you know my situation, like why would you try to taint it? But by that time, I knew something was up. I was just counting down the days until something happens and enjoying it.
Were you hoping that she wouldn't say anything
No,
this could keep
it
going?
was wrong. It was wrong.
You felt like it was wrong?
I didn't feel it was wrong, no, but I knew it was wrong. I have...
What's the distinction? Sorry.
If I feel, it's my feelings. So, for example, I can feel like I love someone, but I know I love them when I sit with myself and I grill myself. Do your actions show that they love them? Do your reactions show that they love them? Is your...
Ġir meta bdejt irrazzjonalizza bdejt tajt
as soon as she told me we need to go to Beppe, I'm like, yeah, I know, okay, no problem.
Marla stage, ġiviri?
No. By that point, it was pretty obvious that although this might be normality, it can't be all the time, for sense.
Right.
No one can not sleep and be energetic for 4 days. And when I say not get tired and not eat, not as I love eating. I know.
Kontet mura xol?
No, I know that those 4 days I wasn't. It was a bit funky that period. I had quite a bit of a time away from work. I was very lucky enough. They understood me. They gave me 2 months at home and I worked a bit, etc. But not very functional. In fact, when I went to work...
2 months leading to those 4 days at night?
No, after.
So, okay.
In fact, at a point I did go to work and I told my manager, I'm going to demand a demotion. The person beneath me is extremely capable. I will make this transition as painless as possible, but I'm going to do maths. Now, please note, my arithmetic is shit. Like if you ask me 8 times 4, till nowadays I have to go, oh no, 8 times 4, okay. So when I say my love for maths, I'm not an arithmetic guy. Like people give you a konta li tħobb il-maths oddu, and I'm like, no clue. No clue.
Mela għalfejn tħobbu l-mezz?
I don't know the reason why, but I know many reasons why I started liking it. It is a very factual, non-biased, non-emotion. Like if you follow a sequence of steps, you're going to get an answer. Almost 99.999%. There are rules which help you. You can convert maths to logic and facts. So when you read about logic, there's a lot of maths in it. And that to me is fascinating because when we talk, there's a lot of maths involved, the calculations we make in our life and society. The trebuchet, which I mentioned before, is absolutely mind-blowing.
Do you want to explain trebuchet for...
I get excited about things which I wouldn't know the details of them. But the beauty of the story is that 3,500 years ago, these Japanese folk managed to invent a trebuchet. Well, it had already been there.
Trebuchet is a catapult.
Exact. So if you used to play Age of Empires, it's that big thing that destroys walls. Okay, that was a bad analogy. And basically, 3,500 years ago, we did not have most of the maths that we have today that you would need to optimize such a trebuchet. So a trebuchet, if you know, has those 2 legs. It has the spagon, it has the rod. Tidally, how do you know it was maximized? How do you know it was optimized? Because they stopped finding more variations of the trebuchet after that period, and they found the best one. So they knew it was the best, and they stopped. Now, for someone like me, with ChatGPT, I can probably build a trebuchet in a month, maybe. For them to do it, mind-boggling. And you start seeing a lot of these things. Yes, because I started to especially believe...
lift fl-istorja ta' trebuchet, ġviri. Kif
waslu
biex matematikament irnexxielhom jifmu kif trebuchet ta' melaħjar minn oħra.
Crazy. And other things as well. The fact that animals can count, for example. So you might tell me that's not a very impressive thing. But 1 + 1, without having an understanding of maths, glorious. Like you see Keith Devlin talking about this, you'll get much more excited than me.
Okay.
But yeah.
Fuck, I'm trying to... what makes it so spectacular? Li għattus jistajot, per eżempju, xamela...
Well, let's say you get a 3-year-old, right? And he starts counting. That's pretty impressive. I don't know if 3-year-olds count, but let's say they don't. But when you have an organism that hasn't been given the training or it cannot speak and no one teaches it, nothing.
Ma tistax tiret l-erf imma xaġa li...
It is exactly.
Intuitivament tibda tagħmel.
One of the most interesting experiments that they mention is an experiment of a crow and the watchtower. The crow goes into the open window when the guard leaves. When you put 2 guards in and one of them leaves, it still doesn't go into the empty window. I'm containing myself not to start smiling a lot. When the second person goes out, that crow goes in. As banal as that seems to you, mind-boggling. And I'm sure there are, I mean, I held my crow, but if I had to go on the internet, which I never did, because once I believed it and it made sense and I could see a paper, I'm like, okay, this is it. Like if I go out there and someone looks animal counting, they'll probably come up with so many more better examples.
Know your food. Book your food intolerance and allergy test now. Browns.
Tiġi l-ura d-dar Gabi wara shift ix-xogħol, Gabi infermiera għatli.
Yes.
U tajlek isma' ħammur għal Beppe, u inti tajdilha, okay.
Yeah.
Fimt li razzjonalment dik hija l-aqwa triq għalik. But mortu għand Beppe li qed nassumi għal psikjatra.
Yeah, indeed. Guy I trust a lot and his help.
So, u wasaltu għandu u qabatu rak dakinhar.
Yes. Thankfully, he realized what was going on. She told him, she asked at work, this and this is happening. In fact, as I know with the story, someone told her, here you go, I won't tell you. And then they actually told her, this is probably bipolar. So she was... And then I went there and he had told me, listen, Rob, you don't have depression. And he asked me a couple of questions. Are you very sexually...
aroused?
Parissa? Yes. Are you... And I was excited answering him. He's like... Are you eating? No. And then at the end of it, he goes, and I'm still thinking at that point, we're onto something. He goes, you have manic depressive. Okay. And I left the office at that, like a bit after with Gappy. I think they had explained to me at that point it's bipolar. And in my head again, I was still in the camp of, we've solved this. Whatever it is, you could have called me a rabbit. Like, Rob, we discovered you're a rabbit. I don't know how to tell you this, but you're going to have to take these pills. Like in my head, I'm like, if it feels 10% of this, I'll eat carrots all day. Thankfully, I don't eat carrots. Thankfully, I'm not a rabbit. But the pills are still more or less the same. It's a bit of a learning curve when you start.
Fl-ebda punt ma konti xukjat li fimt li għandek din il-kondizjoni?
I don't glamorize it. I don't romanticize it, fantasize about it. I would wish it on my worst enemy, in fact. And it really, really is a rod in your spokes all day long. And I fought it, and when I was younger...
Do you feel like it's unfair, the fact that you have to deal with that rod in your spokes all day long?
But fairness, who?
Do you believe in something like cosmic fairness?
I don't know if you're saying this because you know the answer. I am a spiritual person and I believe in God. But these things are...
Le, naf li temmen falla, naf li inti Kristjan, pero ma nafx umbat biex ta...
Like the world, for example, is the world doing its thing, what?
Le, mela.
Like fairness, what's fair?
Ma nafx nsaqsi li
No,
jek
I don't.
ġustizzja kosmika spiex, ta?
We all get our own.
Din il-mistoqsija li ħobb ħafna Stephen Fry u Hitchens li kiku hemm Alla u Alla huwa ġust kif iħalli l-babies fl-Afrika jmutu. Grazzi tal-li qed issegwu din it-taħdida bejni u l-ħabib tiegħi Robert Gruppetta. Qabel ma nkomplu nfakkar li hawn numru ta' azzjendi li lilna jgħinuna biex inkomplu nipproduċu dan il-proġett. Minn qalbi nirringrazzja il-dawn l-azzjendi, il-Browns, il-Vinja Capricci ta' Abram, grazzi lil ESS, il-Maple, Apex Media, Kutriko, Wellbees.mt, kif ukoll Garmin u Derek Meets. Ringrazzjakom minn qalbi. Għatlaqna jien u Robert Gruppetta.
So if God lets the bad things happen, then he's let the good things happen and we have a God. Great, we're done. Like if your argument is about like if you see a zebra dying, like eaten by a pack of hyenas, we don't go, shit, there's no God. Like we go, those hyenas want to eat, right? But suddenly because it's a human, we're special.
So jena ma nasibx li Alla huwa jekkem Alla. Ma nafx hekk ħanin daqskemm forsi jenat dwaru.
Super interesting question. Don't have an answer, but I don't discuss the is there a God because of bad things. It's like there are good things.
Il-mistoqsija f'dak il-każ ma tiġix is there a God?
From the place.
Jena għanti mux fej rridu mela. L-ipotezi ta' jekkem xalla mux li edha fil-mizin. L-ipotezija ejja najdu, ejja naqbdu ma' part A tal-hypothesis, Alla. Issa, meta nara jidnaf klips lava ċiklu zebra bħal mettajt inti. U nara d-batija u eżagġerat u l-makabrità ta' zebra u forsi għanna omma tara l-baby zebra tikluha. Dik il-ħruxija għalija miex evidenza ta' Alla illi huwa ħanin. Żgur li setaj kiku fis-sens. Dik kien ukoll omnipotenti, ġifieri jekk huwa omnipotenti, żgur mhux ħanin. Forsi mhuwiex omnipotenti. Għax hekk omnipotenti naqala bibżobbu.
That I can swing with and argue it because discussing God's isu enough mood is something which I never really thought about, right? Like for me, I don't think if God is good or not.
Why do you like? Why are you a Christian?
That will definitely. Let's go for the shortest answer as always. I started Y4J at 16. I went into a meeting. Y4J is Youth for Jesus. I was a metalhead at St. Aloysius. A friend of mine invited me after 4 and 5 to go to this meeting.
Yeah.
Tempted me with good-looking females. Sajjena bil-flok ta' script notċari spike notċari jekk konsemmuta. And I went at Hamur Darbeja. And basically they got the Eucharist out. And in my head, I remember clearly saying to myself, like, this is going to be the most boring 2 hours of my life. But then I had what I don't like to talk about because it's not personal, but I can't verify it. So I had my first personal experience with God or with something that opened my door. And then from there, it's always been tipo...
Kellek moment epifaniku ġiviri?
I don't know the meaning of that, but it sounds like it, yes. So let's go with it.
Kellek moment fej.
It wasn't
Għaraft xi ħaġa fuq l-eżistenza li ma konx taraf qabel.
It wasn't very special because I was just curled up in a ball, tipo crying, basically. So it wasn't like I was hypomanic outside running. But at that moment, I felt a certain peace, which was like nothing before, maybe not even after. But that is not why I'm a Christian. Tipo,
Imma minn hemmhekk bdiet.
I've taken drugs and felt better sometimes, stuff keep, but that is where it started for me.
But you're not a drug addict. So you're a Christian not because of the feeling, is what I'm trying to kind of get at.
That's what got me into it.
Għax jien nafek bħala bniedem razzjonali ħafna.
Yeah.
Li ġeneralment is-soltu ħafna bnies razzjonali, hyper rational li naf, ġeneralment jimbiedu mill-Kristjaneżmu.
Probably because I think these very logical people, if they had to continue looking at these biology, maths, probably even physics, longer, and you see how more beautiful it gets to the abstract point. So, for example, it is very common, like every mathematician of A level, Mandish, will know that maths is not discovered; it's been created. Like it is kind of an agreed upon thesis that maths is not discovered, and that on its own already like should tingle something in someone. To go, what do you mean? It's not made. Like everything is made. Like that is my opinion. Everything is made here.
Yeah.
So you start getting to points like the complexity of life, evolution. Like, I'm a very big Christian. I'm a failing Christian. That's what I like to call myself. I try to be a Christian. That's the best thing. Because I'm in the house, but I'm near the door.
That's like il-biċċabija ta' Kristjani, ma mhux
everyone is a
vera
failed
ftit,
Christian.
eżatt li huma li
Yeah, we all fuck up. So there are some people like me who all gas, no brakes sometimes, which ain't great always. But anyway, the point was that so when you get to these beautiful things of biology, the complexity of life, how evolution happened, something should go. I think even statisticians, there should be more people who are religious because you'll start looking at the probability of things happening, like discovering life.
Ġiri ta' tajt inti iktar ma tħaffer fil-fond.
The complexities become beautiful.
The abstract soup that underlies it all should give you more credence in something other than simple carbon.
Exactly. This isn't kif tajt an argument for gold, by far not. But when I see someone like John Conway, who I might have mentioned before, another interesting mathematician who famously on YouTube was asked, before you die, what would be the one thing like you'd like to know? And he said, who made the monster group? Groups in maths are basically a collection of numbers which, as the name implied, are in a group and they share a lot of properties which are similar. He had found this monster group and a subgroup of it. I might be butchering the terminology as always, because as I like to say, street terminology is what I have. And to see someone like him pondering about something over maths,
monster group ma numru ta'
basically it's
numri.
Exactly.
Grupp ta' numri.
Exactly. And they have
Xamlu
specific
speċjali ma.
similar characteristics. Now what that characteristics are, I will not go into, not because I'll bore you, but because I don't know them. I read it once, what the monster group was. I read it in detail to make sure I'm not seeing a TikTok video of a guy.
U zik taf xinu, s-soltu inti tkun fact checker. Ma l-lum assistandur fuq li tkun qiegħed bil-qedem
Even if
fact check monster group numbers.
Even if you ask me to check it, it's like I have nothing to come back to you as apart from it's there.
Memx il-Webster definition taħħa.
I'm sure there is, but way over my head, right? Way over my head.
So
he is a known atheist.
Nasab ġuni għati provajtina daqqatitem.
Oh. There you go.
Mela. In group theory, the monster group, shortened to M or F, is important. It is also called the Fisher-Grease monster or the friendly giant. It is a group of finite number of elements, which is equal to 2 to the power of 46, 3 to the power of 20, 5 to the power of 9, 7 to the power of 6. M'għandix idea.
Exactly.
X'inhu r-raġunar, special pattern x'inhu.
Correcto. I don't know why. As I remember at the time, and if I read an hour of it, I'll get there. But the point at my head was, I'm seeing this atheist who loves maths, who is revered in maths, and it's not really his dying question. I mean, probably if he was at a deathbed and they told him, like, what do you want to know? He would have probably said, like, get me all the food or something, like, or something better. But still, the fact that he asked and it's his group, it really shows that you get to places where it won't make you a Christian, but it'll be hard to say you're not an agnostic at that point. Tant jiġru affarijiet with life, for example, the fact that we are talking, mind-blowing. Mind-blowing.
Żgur li hija biżgħar. Naħseb huwa fenomenu għalija il-fatt illi maħniex daqshekk anzjużi fuq il-ħajja.
Why would we?
Ġifieri li tant aħna sirna kapaċi, jew tant l-evoluzzjoni għamlitna kapaċi li niġu distratti b'affarijiet, dejjem nitfgħu goals għalina nfusna, mela irdu nafnaddu mill-eżamiet tal-iskola ma tiġu ġob tajjeb u mbagħad irdu jinaf l-isbaħ tfajla u dejjem isu ngħaddu minn objettiv għal objettiv għal objettiv. U isu f'dik l-azzjoni kollha qatt naħseb kważi dik nagħmlu hekk bħala defense mechanism għal fatt li aħna ħajjin u biex ma rridx nikkontemplaw, ma żomm. Kif ma kontx u f'daqqa waħda kont u issa mhux se nkun. What is the membrane that separates existence from inexistence? And can it be so all just a big exercise in probability? And there was a cosmic roll of the dice, and what the dice showed eventually was planet Earth with biology, with fauna, with flora, with humanity, with Miley Cyrus, with Eminem, with Julian sitting there with the headphones and like how improbable is all of this? It's all a bit it's all a bit
if you want to send you a
disturbing,
video of
like
how
what you say.
improbability is in fact.
Il-mara ta' FDR, sibili di, il-mara ta' FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, kienu saqsewa what do you think about the afterlife? I'm fucking it up, Julian will find it. But she says basically, well, it wouldn't be any more weird for me to turn up in another life than it has for me to turn up in this one.
That's damn right.
Which is a pretty eloquent and smart quip. The other quote I wanted to refer to was Louis Pasteur, għal-kem naħseb li mhux vera Louis Pasteur għala. Naħseb kien hemm numru ta' xjentisti li speċa baqgħu Le, Louis Pasteur li biochemist, speciali sab li id-deni jiġi minn ċertu bakterja, un bat għalek nippastorizzaw il-ħarib. U da, insomma, saħa fost, naħseb anka xjentisti oħrajn, għallu biex meta tkun taf ftit xjenza s-sirati ju, meta tkun taf ħafna xjenza ma mandekx motiħor li fl-temmem li jeżisti Alla.
Li mandekx motiħor, I definitely disagree with, because you could be face to face with God and tell him.
Sure. But
but for sure, and I really believe that if you are
19th century scientists, hyperbole is like they're big. They have a big hyperbole game, and that's why I like them. Sorry, content tight?
Oh no, I think that was the point. So the more you look for whatever you want, and you really look for it intently, I think people start to diverge to the same place. I'm not saying it's God, damn no, but it's interesting.
But you are a Christian, so you chose
for sure.
The part of
the dark side.
Well,
I'm joking. Yeah, the light side, I guess.
I mean, if you speak to the Luciferians, maybe they would agree.
You never know.
Yeah, that's
Nara xi podcast tagħha.
Luciferians are. Well, I don't know. It's a pretty interesting breed of person.
Yeah. In my metal phase, I definitely delved into it and started reading who's who, how did it start, LaVey u hekk.
Hemm parti minna illi tajt ma dejjem nisla mill-idea tal-enlightenment li speċ tal-bniedem ma reċib ignorant, il-bniedem ma reċib jiddependi fuq l-okkultizmu. Le, da, il-Luciferianizmu. Tkellimt ma' ħafna nies li jiġu mill-Luciferianizmu u satanizmu u kultant mhux dejjem jaqblu fl-affarijiet li qed jgħidu dwar x'inhu l-Luciferianizmu. U min jispjegalek il-Luciferianizmu bħala sempliċi biex ta' it-tidwil the enlightenment period. Sewa speċa li huwa l-espressjoni kwintessenzjali tal-enlightenment period li inti you are a light unto yourself. Sewa hija l-massima li jużaw.
Sounds pretty Christian to me, so maybe I'll meet one of them.
I don't know. There might be overlap here and there. Isma, let's go back to your life story. So back to Beppe's office. You left Beppe's office.
Please know
And-
that since we're mentioning Beppe's office, I once left that office also with Gabby. And had I continued walking away from the office, apparently I was going to have police called on me. In reality, like the psychiatrist did think I needed to go to Mount Carmel. I was adamant that it's no, and I told him I'm going home.
Right.
And he said, if you go home, an ambulance or police will come after you. And I called his bluff. And at the bottom of the road of Waiui, he comes down with his bike, Rob, stop. They will come. Quite a sobering experience because then there's like an ambulance, you're in the middle of the
Dakinhar
road.
ġifieri?
No, another time. Dakinhar, I
Qabel
did...
jew wara?
Wara.
Mela, okej, ħanaslu għalih. Mela, dakinhar jibatek id-dar ibiddilek il-mediċina,
Yes,
nassumi,
everything, of course.
biddilek il-mediċina u bdejt tara titjib fil-qada tiegħek.
Definitely not straight away. So the first 2-3 months, when I was still shocked, a bit mentally, because now I had to go through most of my life and understand, was this me or was this me being manic? Am I this kind of person or was I being very depressed? So you go through a period where, for someone like me, who I always think about myself,
Yeah.
suddenly you're like, shit, can I say it? Or no, we'll bleep it. Who am I? And it sounds like
Bro,
something
you've been watching
that-
this podcast for 3
But
years.
I will forget these things very
Okay,
easily. When,
yes.
when, like you, if something's not important in my head, if they're swearing or not, ninsa. Anyway, and where was I? So just who am I? And those 3 months, it was a lot of thinking, going back. Some of the things I realized, yeah, that's probably could have been a bit of mania.
Okay.
But for the by and large, because of maybe my mind, how I work, I didn't really blame it much on the bipolar. It was always my choice and lack of control. So that way it's always me who's the problem rather than around me. And that way the solution is much easier because imagine having to change the world instead of changing myself. Much harder. So I chose myself.
Yeah.
So during this period, I liked myself a bit more eventually because I was like, oh wow, this could have gone real bad because
Da wara
The first-
3 xhur.
waqtom.
Waqt
This
dak
was-
tagħmel dat il-metamorfosi.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still doing it, honestly. It's only been, when you compare 3 years to 30, even though my first 10 years I wasn't doing much, probably, it's still about 20 years that you're suddenly going through and remembering what you can, going, when I see that person, I might need to say sorry, for example. But I had during that period, especially, it was not only reflecting, but also deciding. So, for example, in my head,
Yeah.
if I have a question about what type of person I am, I have to know it straight away. Sometimes I'll ask someone, I'm that type of person. Many of the idea I don't have probably. I'm not that type of, I'm that person because da. So obviously I got to know myself. Like,
Tista' spjegaħna iktar dal-proċess.
you got to know yourself.
The getting to know yourself. Ġifieri kif kont tagħmilha? Kont poġġi bil-qiegħda u tikteb lilek innifsek jew tikteb
Yes, I used
dwarek.
to write a lot. So I used to buy a lot of copybooks. You're also very impulsive at the time, which is in fact why I gave Gabby my wallet, my dak iż-żmien, kollox. But I
You
used
handed
to-
in all your
Yeah, all the
anything that could
anything that
potentially
could
be
be damaging.
devastating. All right.
Which is many things, funnily enough. And basically, from over there, I guess you have yourself, right?
And what kind of things were you writing?
It would start the beginning of the day with a business idea that I think is going to change my life. Then I realize I'm being bipolar. So I stop and tell myself I can't do this. Why? And then I say, okay, but I've always had to try concentrate, and I'll start drawing something. And it would be like 8, I still have them, a bunch of A3 papers full of drawings and thought processes, classification of things. I did this because of this. I am that type of person. But actually, taf kif a lot of that, weeks of it, I guess. And I always used to ask myself different questions. So sometimes, who are you? Make sure you know.
How
So
deep into your personality did you get? Because
this is super cool because I like to tell many people, you maybe know yourself 10%. And that's
Yeah.
usually being super, super, super nice.
Yeah.
Deep, and maybe I got to know 10% of myself, maybe.
How do you make that calculation?
Because I know I can't remember everything that I did. So I look at all the things that I factor, which I use in decision making. And if I know more or less how that's working, is so I think I know myself. So if I put myself in this situation, I should know more or less how I'm going to react, what I'm going
Right.
to think. And you can only know it if you think about it. So my relationship with death, for example, is quite easy because I used to think about suicide, blah, blah, blah. So then at that point, I'm like, again, death now, how do you feel about it? Okay. And you start calibrating. Does it many of it could mean absolutely nothing. Sometimes it doesn't, because I might have done many things in the past which normal people do. Well, normal people, fimtni. So it's difficult. And that's why 10% is a shot in the dark.
So, mela, meta kont qed tagħmel l-esplorazzjoni tal-personalità tiegħek, kif kont tagħmelha? Kont timmaġna xenarji differenti li inti tista' tkun affaċċat bihom u tgħid, kieku Rob kif.
I definitely was in the passenger seat of that journey, I think. Fis-sense my mind was going at such a speed li I'm not going to say I control most of it. Fis-sense if it wanted to think of what I saw in maths the week before, it would, and sometimes it would think of it for hours.
So you didn't actively say, okay, I'm going to
I
do
would
this
be sitting
exercise
down at a desk
illi
with a
jissa ħalli
paper.
prova nitgħallem iktar dwar il-nifsijin.
Yes, but it's the equivalent of going to the fridge from the sofa and ending up in Ċirkewa. So I'm there, everything is set, but
Okay.
in the beginning I was a bit hard on myself. I'm like, no, you can't, you have to be disciplined. Then I realized, listen, you're going through a bit. Like it's always changing.
Over time saret aħjar di l-esperjenza jew il-kapaċità il-fakultà tiegħek. Il-fakultà li li din il-Ferrari taqbad l-steering inti u tibda tiggwida inti.
I think it didn't get easier, I made it easier fis-sense. So for example, I'm working at the moment in a job which excites the living hell out of me from morning to evening, right? Imagine me not on lock and hold all the time. Like I'd be like someone with ideas non-stop. So in the beginning, when I joined, they immediately said, first 2 months, super rigid. Fis-sense, you will laugh, you will smile, you will joke, but not the next level. Like when we get there, but for now, it's this. And like that's why anything that happens, I'll just, I can do this. Why? Because I'm always the posma. No excitement, no ideas, production. And that's quite an easy control, right? Because it's one control all the time. It's beneficial because obviously me being too excited, although it's great, it's not the most direct place. So in my head, I thought that's a pretty easy thing to do, right? But until you find these easy ways, it's hard.
Yeah.
And they don't always work. So it's hard because it doesn't always work. And in my head, if you do the same thing and it doesn't work, that's shit.
So let's go to these 3 months. It got, it's a very subjective thing for me to say now, pero mbagħad forsi inti tista' titfalla oġġettività fiha. Billi qed nisma' dawk it-3 xhur l-affarijiet bdew jiġu għall-aħjar.
Yeah, we can say that.
Imma issa tittajli l-metrika ta' aħjar.
One of the biggest benefits that I got out of it was the realization that there was actually something wrong. I'm not saying that before because I had depression and the ADHD is what wasn't proven in my head.
Yeah.
But it was much less tangible. I couldn't taste it. I couldn't say, Isma, to myself, this happened. I'm ADHD. Actually, I remember when I was young, I went to a guy, he gave me a paper, right? Yeah. And I wasn't dumb. So when I'm seeing the questions to be gauged if you're ADHD or not, and there is, can you sit down for a long time? I'm obviously going to stick it as no, aren't I, if I want Ritalin. So that doubt remained.
Meta takil dik il-biċċa karta inti kont taf li trid Ritalina?
Naħseb għaddit li minn moħħ ftit.
Tkun taf x'inhi l-esperjenza.
I already had, for sense I have a younger brother who has ADHD. Him they had discovered earlier, and so I knew Ritalin from home.
You knew what it was, or had you already experimented?
By that time I had experimented, yeah, for sure.
Okay. So you did il-preskrizzjoni tiegħek inti?
To have my own supply, exactly. So I always had those doubts. I can't concentrate to save my life, right? I will do it by brute force or by making it interesting. But this bipolar, because hypomania happened, so it's much more tangible, it's much more tasteable. So in my head, I'm like, okay, it's not because you're not disciplined with your head that it thinks like this all the time, because a lot of things it is. But there's also an element of this, whatever it may be, bipolar, that sometimes can kick you here and there. But by that point, it wasn't such a bad thing, I guess.
All right. Wara daw it-3 xhur?
I went back to work. Definitely was a bit all over the place. Not too all over the place. But because I knew...
Il-punt li spiċċajt, spiċċajt Mount Carmel, qed nifhem sew.
Yeah, I mean, more than once, but yes.
Okay. All right. Taf ma konx nafa li dwarek.
I hope they got your reaction.
Xej, aħna la kondotta ma nitolbu, la ċertifika. Għandek O-levels għandek inti?
In fact, yes, you never...
I never asked for any of the shit.
Tipo laqqas isma Rob, taf li nitbu kollox bil-Malti jew. Ma nix... Trid tkun...
Le, għandna proofreaders, ma le, ħana li kiena, mela jena nkun ifittex. nis li huma intelligenti u għandhom work ethic tajba u integri. Dawk it-tlieta biżejjed
Il-work ethic tiegħi kif ħadd tkun tafu jekk qatt ma ħdimt miegħi. Intelligenza.
L-ewwel bdejna inti kont ilek li ngħidlek isma' għandi d-data tista' tfaħħli fi graf għal meta kwart oħra jibda l-podcast.
That was work.
That is part of what you give to the outfit now. So I always found just very kind of like xaħat li huwa dependably li nista' nibatlek u tibat li lura u tejn u dert li kellek interess dak li qed nagħmlu, dert li l-proġett jogħġbok.
Kemm xejn.
U allura spiex ta' bad għadna nippruvaw. Bad pruvajna u l-work ethic tiegħek hija tajba inti bnidem onest, integru u intelligenti. So those are the things that I'm kind of generally.
Intelligence I always push back on when people tell me. I think even you have told me in the past and I've pushed back. Sense that I just see myself as I go, not the extra mile, the extra 20 centimeters, honestly. Sometimes the answer is there. People just stop and they're like, we've tried everything.
Yeah.
What have you tried? I did this, and this. So that's everything. Yep.
Yeah.
And for me, the fourth thing is my 20 centimeters. And I am not surprised anymore, but many times it gets you a long way.
Yeah, mental endurance is also kind of like, there is, emminu kapaċi jkun intelligenti at bursts, and it's impressive to watch. Imma mbagħad emminu kapaċi jkun intelligenti għal perjodu twil ta' ħin.
Funnily enough, I have
U
more.
jibqa' jsolvi bil-mod, jsolvi bil-mod, jsolvi
Eżatt,
bil-mod.
eżatt.
Jekk titfa' per eżempju xi ħadd bħal John Cleese, ma nafx minnu John Cleese. John Cleese huwa dan attur, playwright, kiteb Fawlty Towers.
Ooh, yeah, of course. man.
Ġirajtu Fawlty Towers.
Yeah, definitely.
Kellu l-Monty Python, kellu The Life of Brian. U kien jgħid li u ma kienu numru ta' sketch writers, ma u kien laqwa wieħed, u kien jaf li kien laqwa wieħed, u kien jgħid li u kien laqwa wieħed mhux għax kien fil-verità kellu aktar talent mill-kittiba l-oħrajn, imma għax kien ħalli iktar ħin. Ma jħux l-ewwel għażla li jtieħ moħħu, forsi jiktiba, imma jaf li mhijiex żgur mhux l-aħħar. U kultant jien nagħmilha nġennan in-nies għax nibqgħu l-aħħar minuta rolling zoom taf x'ħan nagħmlu, ħanajlek x'ħan nagħmlu. U dik li
It does sometimes happen, yes.
on the seldom occasion. So anyway, diki li speċa għanti ikollok din il-kumdita li jew din il-fakulta. Mux qassu talent, qasna fesaċċinu. Dimma
That's why I
li
don't
tkun
push
komdu
back.
l-ħin kollu.
Yeah. Like for me, if you put me in a room with hieroglyphics, I know nothing about them, right? Nothing.
But you think you will solve the puzzle of.
Fis-sens, the next 20 centimeters, are they red, for example? Okay, if it's red, does that mean anything? Does that not mean anything? Like, could it be that it's just rock erosion? Like, you just ask questions and go find the answers.
We should do a panic room one day.
I don't know what a panic room is.
Team building. Mux panic room dawk jedulhom. Dawk il-kmama jitfaq ġo kamra. Escape room. Panic room hija xi ġoħra film ta' Jodie Foster. Pass.
I've seen these escape rooms, yes. Not something that excites me usually because puzzles without real output usually don't get me entertained, but maybe.
Le, ħobbu namlu, ma l-familja namlu, meta nsifru, namlna.
Me and Gabby play PlayStation instead sometimes, and it's not always constructive. When you're a gamer all your life and suddenly you're playing even the simplest of games with someone, their monitor is just constantly xirrikna. I told you. But our experience of the room is on the sofa.
Kemm ilek anti ma' Gabi?
We'll cut off this long part. 3 years about?
3 years. Mizzewweġ.
Yeah.
Kemm ilek mizzewweġ?
I think I proposed after a year and a half. We got married a year ago, so I'm missing half a year somewhere. We'll just fill it in somehow. But yes, I've been married since last year in September.
U kif kien fis-sens dal-perjodu kollu ovvjament ma kienx perjodu faċli.
No, it definitely wasn't.
Fl-istess perjodu li qegħdin tiżżewġu, ġifieri jew għadkom tiżżewġu ma nafx sa tfejġi.
Indeed. So back then we weren't married yet. It was still before. I was going through a hell of a busy time at work as well. But we were still in our, kif tajt, l-erusija, whatever. This is the first time I've used that, but And
Meta
she
kienet qed tiġi miegħek
was-
għandha Beppe kienet
I mean, how she acted in many of these places is one of the reasons why I felt always more confident that I'm marrying the right person. Not the right person, touch with these things, but I'll say that, obviously. But it gave me more...
What do you mean by all of that? You just said two sentences.
Mushek, because getting married and deciding that you're going to marry someone for the rest of your life, suppose there's a crazy decision. And the fact that people don't have planners for it, you'll go to a bank for a loan, right? But there's no planner for someone to get the right person for the rest of your life. But anyway, it's hard.
Ma
And when
inti
you're
dik
someone-
id-deċiżjoni għamilta.
Exactly. And when you're someone like me, that decision is hell. Why? Because it's this full of unknowns. But somehow, there were a series of events, things that she did, how she acted, how she reacted, and I judge reactions a lot, funnily enough. And at a point, I was like, oh, wow, this is the first time I felt this properly. I evaluated, I said, okay, are the underlying questions which someone should ask?
X'għamela speċjali,
Positive.
x'għamela speċjali dwar ir-reazzjonijiet tagħha li qed issemmi?
No, reactions wasn't her smiling or laughing. Reaction, what I mean is, you're dating someone, you know he's a bit fucked up in his brain, and now he's also bipolar. Like she had time to run for the hills.
Why didn't she run?
And people told her to run for the pills, like more than
No,
once.
right, I think they told you to run for the pills and her for the hills.
Yes.
Two different things.
But I've heard people telling her this.
Yeah, but why didn't she? Why did she stay?
Good question. And that is another reason why I respect, love her so much. Because she
Which is?
has, while respect and love
No,
her,
why did she stay?
I don't know.
Can we call her and ask?
You can. And
Okay,
she'll
I think
probably
we should ring her.
answer. Grab my phone. The password is like this. So it's 7.
Okay, let's have this quick call to figure out.
Are you really going to call her? This is our first time on your podcast, I think.
No,
Although I should
no,
ask.
we've made calls. Have we made calls before on the podcast? Provajna ma qabbadniex, niftakar li provajna. Darba meta kont qiegħed għand Marka Millieri kont provajt inċempel il-Matthew Karwana Galizja ma stax naqbdu. U b'mura dalija xi tikellem għal Bebbuxu. Xi ħaġa kienet. Ma third time's a charm.
She's probably going to be sleeping.
Il-Going Fan Eurosport Garmin Relay Tri reġat mana. Nar il-ħadd 23 ta' Ġunju atmosfera dejjem tal-ġen. Jekk inx imsieħeb fi klabb jew qegħdin grupp ta' xogħol li tridu tiġu tieħdu sija buzz dan huwa l-avveniment għalik. Imla l-formola billi segwi l-link fid-deskrizzjoni. Nar il-ħadd 23 ta' Ġunju Relay Tri narakom.
Hello?
Hi Gabi, jiena John.
Oh, John.
Isma' taf li qed nagħmlu podcast jien Robert.
Iva.
U tħallna naqra fuq l-erosija tagħkom. Palissa, by the way, edha fuq il-mikrofon inti.
Okay.
U saqsejtu tipo dik kif baqgħet miegħek. U ma kienx jaf. U peress li m'għandix fact checker illum għax il-fact checker qed nintervistaħ. I'd go straight to the source.
I see.
Bil-mod.
Aħna live.
Fire questions, Maddanni.
Mela, għalfej għadek ma Robert, għalfej bqajt x'kien il-fascinu ta' Robert Gruppetta.
Illa, man.
I've never asked this.
affarijiet u.
Kienet rieda.
Nħobbu, ovvjament. He's very caring, he's very loving.
What's a caring thing that Robert does?
The dishes.
Taħħa sekonda titkellem jien ma' donna.
A caring thing that Robert does. Illa, John, you really put me on the spot, Madonna. I
Not
was
at all.
expecting him to call me. A lot of things.
If there are a lot, you can choose.
Well, anyway, just so you know, he's been saying some wonderful things about you. That's why, għalek, badna speċa din il-modija ta' t-għan tajtilna l-istoria ta' mux kif il-tqajtu, ma' insomma, il-żminijiet li għaddejtu fl-imkien u beda jsemmik ħafna. Allora speċa nibtet kurzita. Imma tħobbu għax caring, għax gustus.
That's that's not one of the things.
That's not one of the things?
I'm joking.
The kindest, Tista, the kindest.
He makes me laugh. He's caring. He's loving.
L-istess affarijiet qed ngħidu da. Għax qed not. The same unique things you're saying, caring 3 times.
Okay, listen, I think you guys are going to have to take this up
home?
once you
Yes.
return home. Mustandaw mollum. Thank you for taking the call, Gabby.
Okay, thank you, Inti.
And
Good, alright, or we do it again.
It's good.
on this podcast we do nothing again. All right, grazie ħafna, Gab.
Alright. Thank you.
Take care.
Ciao.
Ciao, Xbin. Ciao, ciao.
Thinking on her feet and being on the spot, not her forte.
Allora mux mislek għatli champions ta' ħosni għazini.
As if I love seeing these things happen.
All right, mela.
So, I have to figure out why my wife is still with me, apparently.
Le, she
I'm
thinks you're
joking, I'm
caring.
joking. Yes. I don't let us use a lot of these words, but to me, like, caring is one of the most tenuous things while you're with someone. So in my head, as a almost default, like everyone should be a bit caring, right? Like if I'm
Should
going-
be, yes, should
Yeah,
be.
yeah.
But a lot of people are, not a lot, but I'm sure there's like selfish,
Mhux hekk,
devious,
but I'm not going to-
Machiavellian.
marry someone because
Resentful.
they meet my basic requirements, tipo. And I know she said this in a great way, and I would just want to help her squeeze out a bit more. Not like maybe it comes 10 years, maybe in 20 years, whenever. But to a point where she'll be like, I see why you used to say I shouldn't just say caring, because it's so easy to just say caring. Like, why would you marry this person? They're caring, they're loving, they're
Nas il-marti l-istess affarijiet tajt fuqi.
yeah, but then it's up to me to like. That's why I don't ask her these questions, right? Because I see her actions.
But jena nġi nervus, nba saqsija għar sabiħ bil-patata barra. And then she laughs and I break the
Yeah,
tension like that.
obviously these things too much. But that's why I guess I don't ask a lot, because I look at her actions instead. So for me, like to see her waking up in the morning, she has to go to a 12-hour shift, to tġib li l-breakfast u l-kafe għax jina tingerger fis-sodda ma nistax nqum. I'm like,
Baqti biex tqum inti?
yeah, that is a big part of my life, actually. Yeah, it's a big problem.
Għalfejn?
I have no idea why, and this is why I don't talk about it, because when I don't know about a black box, and that black box is always there, and it is black and it's big, I don't like it, obviously, because I would love to wake up at 6 and fire out of bed. Like,
Right.
I'm always excited to do something. But during that period until I get out of bed, death and despair. Every day. Not when I'm on weekends, not on holidays, not on every day. Forever. Since I
Is it
can
a chemical
remember.
imbalance?
I don't know.
Must
I've
be.
spoken to psychiatrists. But the problem is that when I say this, it's usually with another plethora of problems. So they're like, let's leave that aside for now. Let's fix the bipolar, or let's fix the depression, or let's fix this first. And this is never given importance. It's super important to me, and
Yeah.
Gabby can attest to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know much to tell you about it, but I have a big problem here.
Allora kif tagħmel? Ġifieri tistemba fil-għodda tiftaħ għajnejk u tħoss depressjoni. Hija parti mill-bipolar din il-biċċa tax-xogħol.
I've looked up online. There have been people who said they struggled, but there aren't enough people for me to say, yes, it's a bipolar thing. So no, I don't think so.
Minn dejjem hekk kont meta kont tfal.
When day I'm at 12 is definitely not, because I was chucked out of bed to get out as I needed a lift. When I was 16, I started leaving home, went to my nonna.
Yeah.
And that is where I definitely remember it starting to be a problem, because I didn't have morning work. I used to Skype school, so I used to start waking up a bit later.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I will have about 7 alarms every day. Gabby, in fact, will be calling me even when I'm at work, when I go, oh, Gab, okay, that is why, because she knows that I have a very big problem. And we talk about it sometimes, because obviously when you have children, that is not possible. And
dik vera mhux
generally,
fattibbli,
when I have very big things, then
Torqod tajjeb imma.
that's also an interesting question, because depends what you mean by it. Like, on most days, compared to many people who have bipolar, I'm a great sleeper, right? So I'll hit the bed at around between 11 and 1, and within maybe 10-15 minutes, I will be a beautiful sleep. I do have a lot of all-nighters, and by a lot, I don't mean, it's not weekly, but there are periods when it is weekly.
Imma ġurnata regolari ta' gruppetta
I
hija
sleep at about midnight.
nofs il-lejl ħatkun riqed.
Yeah, and start waking up, or not wake up, at around 7. Every day.
Seba tibda tqum u kemm dum biex tiġi ftijak?
Biex nġi ftijaj. Once I get out of the bed, then it's relatively easy. But it usually takes an hour to get out of bed, which is horrendous in my
U f'dawk is-sabissajat torqod.
Yeah.
Saksa kemm tistembaħ.
Once every blue moon I wake up. Once in another blue moon I'll stay up. Ġifiri nqum per esempio fit-3 fil-ħodu, mur l-sodda ma nistax norqod. I won't fight it too much nowadays because time in bed with my eyes closed staring at nothing is pretty wasted. Like in the bottom, in the totem pole of wasting time, sitting on a bed horizontally with your eyes closed is as bad as it gets. Unless you're thinking, which I do, but I can do most of that thinking before I sleep. I can think when I'm doing things on the computer. Like sometimes I'll go on websites, I'll stay taking notes, find a data set of some sort, enough an inquiry will come out.
Ma tixtieq li ma tibqax din il-problema?
Which one?
Li tistembaħ fis-seba' u ma jirnexxilek toħroġ.
Oh yeah. I think that would be like I'm not a celebratory person. I don't celebrate my birthdays, anniversaries. I will do a week-long party where I will be on leave from everything when that happens. Now,
jekk jirnexxilek issib soluzzjoni għal fatt li tistembaħ.
Of course, the problem in my mind is that sometimes I've done it.
Wara li tikol tħossok aħjar tikol fil-ħodu inti?
No.
Ma tikolx fil-ħodu, ġieri qabel ma tasal l-uffiċċju int ma tkun kil xejn?
Not usually, no.
Tazza kafe?
Tazza kafe ma tikolix, tixroba?
Wija le, ma tkun sma' xejn.
No. Tant indum ma nqum mis-sodda li then once I get up, it's a run to the shower, run to the office. So nothing in between.
La. Alright. Tafal fejt nistaqsi għax it-tifla tiegħi ma jkollix dal-estremitajiet ta' mood swings, imma t-tifla tiegħi skoprejt illi sa ma nitmaħħa xi ħaġa fil-ħodu ma nkellimiex. U ma tindunax miskina li bażikament ikun niżlilha naqra zokkor probabbli xi ħaġa.
People have told me this many times. Yes.
Biex ta' mbagħad ittija barana jew ittija tuffiħa, tikol tnej u tibda terġa' inti ġilt qed mat-tifla tiegħi.
Of course,
kummedjanta kbira.
U
tixi ftaħħa terġa' taf kif imma fil-bid fil-ħodu. Ħafna drabi mhux dejjem tajt, imma ħafna drabi tistembaħ u jkollha din il-dispożizzjoni pjuttost
So always trying something new. So for example, this weekend next I'm going to try, well not try, I'm doing it. I set an alarm clock for 3:30. I'll wake up, take my morning pills at that time and see if that will help me. Once that doesn't work, I'll try something else. I'll wake up at 5. Pete recently told me that he has these weird naps, like you do, Pete of Brandwagon, taking coffee, and then apparently you're meant to wake up revitalized.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm going to try that, for example.
Pete għalilna dik,
well, he told it to me, but then I realized that you do it, because once, without warning, I walked in here, so I left the room talking to you, engaging, and then suddenly I find you on the floor, and everyone working as it's normal. But anyway. So I'm going to wake up at 5, drink my coffee, go back to bed, and see if that helps.
Yeah.
Obviously, getting to the coffee is hard. Yeah. Thankfully, there's Gabby, who might be patient with me sometimes. But yeah, it's always trying something new.
Forse t-time jamal ħin li għandha bżonn tmur ix-xogħol,
for example,
tagħmel kafe.
Yeah.
I wish you luck.
Thank you.
I wish you luck.
Indeed, it's an interesting one, I'll be honest. I don't think it's physical, which is better and worse. But if it's mental, like which nook and cranny of my brain have I not gone to? Like there's a lot, but this isn't something small, taf kif. So I'm quite curious to see. I'm also worried that one day I'll just overcome it and not know what happened. I'm not worried because it's great if that happens. But even though I'm not the most curious person about everything, that I am very curious about.
Taħseb nistgħu mmorru lura l-biografija naqa'?
We should, probably.
Mela, wara dawk it-3 xhur inti mbagħad biex għaddejt bdejt tmur ix-xogħol, fl-impunt spiċċajt li kellek tmur l-isptar hija.
3 occasions and all because I wanted to commit suicide. So in my head, saying it out loud and justifying it is pretty rational. I have found out it is not.
Okay.
Whoever you tell it to, as rational as it is to yourself, thinking that suicide is okay, wrong. So even now in my head, thankfully, when I think it, like automatically my brain goes, that's a wrong thought. So thankfully that part I got. But all these experiences were, 2 of them I think were after the bipolar episode.
Right.
1 of them was before.
Ġifri qabel bipolar episode kont diġà mort darba Mount Carmel.
Yeah, well, for the same reason.
Okay.
Once you tell a psychiatrist or anyone responsible that you want to commit suicide,
Right.
even though you're not planning it, they are within their remit to make a decision for you. I mean, once I was
Biex
bipolar.
jissalvagwardjaw l ħajtek biex jistgħu.
Exactly. How good Mount Carmel is, another story. Did it save me? I don't think I was going to commit suicide. It was just me rationalize it. So if you ask me on another bad day to say it, I will tell you the same things, but my conclusion will be different, more or less. I'll tell you, no, I want to live.
Hemm xi waħda minn dawn il-mumenti li tiftakar aktar minn oħrajn.
Ta' Mount Carmel.
Ta' kif sens kif spiċċajt għat ċertu affarijiet u l-psikjatra għallek isma' inti għallok tidħol Mount Carmel biex aħna nibqgħu nosservaw.
No, I mean, by the third time I learned, right? So nowadays I'm never going to tell him that. So I laugh when I talk to him and I say it in a way where I'm saying, isma', I'm a bit down, I am thinking of it, there's no worry. But yeah, it's hard. So back then I was just saying it logically because in my head, that's in my visual cortex, that's what I had. 2 lists and they just a sign on top, tipo not worth it. And
tu li settajt ġviri kontet
Why I want to live,
u
why I
għalfej
want.
mux worth it.
as in, I'm not too sure there are other approved or good methods rather than seeing what's good and bad in something. And every time I told that to someone, so I mean, the first 2 times I really believed that I really was behind it. The third time, perhaps I was being a bit funny, but believing it as well. But no, I can't really think of them. They're not very different to all the other experiences where I wanted to kill myself at home. Same feelings, same conclusion, just there was no one there listening. Like, I don't think I'll get to the point of doing it. 1, because when you're depressed, you can't do much. So my body literally doesn't want to go anywhere. And 2, because I think when I get there...
This want to go anywhere to...
Yeah, like let's say
to finish the job that's in your head.
As in, obviously, I have knives at home, and anyone with biology and an internet connection can easily... I shouldn't say these things.
Yeah.
But so Isek, they're not special. I was just there because
What is
Gabby,
not special, Tom?
These me moments. Going to Mount Carmel or thinking of suicide a bit more, tightly they're bad, I agree. No one should, I agree.
Yeah.
But fighting it really doesn't help me. Makes it worse because then I feel, oh shit, like I'm not even happy with what I have. So in my head, happy with what I have. Sometimes my worse is more. I'm aware of it. I grab the things that I can do something about them and tick away at them. And the ones that I don't, I've learned to ignore them, but I've learned how to diminish their effect on me. But in these moments, like I was a bit more vocal. People around me, Gabby, obviously will get worried because no one talks like this usually. If someone's talking about suicide, they're in a corner crying, perhaps. You wouldn't expect.
Mux neċessarjament ta'.
Eżatt, but what most people think.
Jikella ħabib li kien li eventualment kommenta suicidju, ma nafx, ma nafx.
Yeah, you wouldn't have seen anything before.
Xej, zero, sa dakinhar stess, sa dakinhar stess għadu qed jaħdem u għadu ġifieri.
I mean, if I wasn't such an open person, like on the outside, I'm pretty happy all the time. Like, but thankfully, I'm quite open even with people about my like not happy times because I feel.
And you have people that you feel
that I can tell.
You can tell.
Well, I can probably tell my bad times to 99% of the world, right? And I really wouldn't worry that much. Like my bad periods are not something. I mean, there are some of them which are kiftajt that I would tell only to Gabby, some of them which I would only tell to Gabby and my close friends, to you guys. But in general, I think 98% of the things that are bad, I'm happy to share them. Why? 1, so that other people see in my funny ways how I solve things. And 2, they also see that, someone breaking up to you is terrible, and it is the end of the world today, but not tomorrow. And like there's small paradigm shifts, which I was lucky enough to be hit by freight trains.
The paradigm shift comes from you saying the thing?
Well, no, I'm just contributing to their journey. If
you're feeling terrible about something, meta taqsama ma' xi ħadd.
Ma naqsamx dak il-ħin, it's after mainly. Like when I'm in a bad mood, I isolate. First I figure out and then I start talking. Otherwise, ħankun nitkellem minn sormi, and I don't like to talk in feelings. So if I'm in a bad mood, and I don't have a reason, okay, there's no feelings. But if I'm in a bad mood because of something and I'm not thinking about it, probably I'm going to enter the argument. Oh, I'm feeling this, and this, because you did that and that. And that's not very constructive, is it? Because number one,
So
what I feel...
so l-metodu tiegħek huwa li tirrifletti l-ewwel u tartikola.
But I'm happy to tell people my problems in general. But on this, if you meant why I tell people my problems, or
Yes.
well, my close friends, I tell them so that one, I'm accountable. Two, if there's a pattern of something like enough, let me think. Spending, I'm not very great with. I don't think I'll ever be, but I'm super easy to give my bank accounts to my wife, which is what currently happens. And I'm happy to tell my friends this, how when we go out, if they see me doing what I used to be younger, li tidħol il-paga, dakinhar mort Parċeville, and let's say just Havana made a lot of money off me, like that's a problem, right? So if suddenly I'm telling my friend, I'm going to buy a laptop, he should not get excited with me. He should be, okay, what for? Like, and they've now gotten to manipulate me, good enough way, to almost use my exciting. What's good about this laptop? Lallu, għax ħadu zaħd. Lallu kull-jum naħsebu. I see. So it's good for them to know, one, because I see them as my, like, for me, my friends are my family, right? Like 100%. And even though I don't meet them a lot, like there's one of my best friends who just discovered that I'm working for you last week. Why? We don't talk that much. But then when we do talk, like I'll give an update, and I want my closest people to know both my good times, but mostly my bad times. Because my good times are easy to celebrate with people, I guess. But that's the place, so what I share with them. And I also do it because I want them to tell me, in the sense that I love solving problems. So if someone, for example, enough has a problem, they should call me. Not a problem like I'm going to talk to you about feelings, I mean that as well. But anything really, enough.
Mela, naħseb namlu tajab li din il-parti spiex ta' nissottolinjaw illi minn għandu xi tip ta' problemi mentali, problemi psikoloġiċi, emozjonali li għaddej minnhom palissa xi ħaġa li żguri jew tlafna li jagħmel eċempel 1770 li għal helpline ta' Richmond jekk qed jgħidulkom ċertu ħsibijiet minn moħħkom. Jgħaddu l-ħafna nies ma nafx l-istatistika x'inhi, però naf ħafna nies madwari, naf ħafna nies fil-familja tiegħi. Missieri kien pjuttost apert pereżempju fuq il-fatt li kien prova suicidju. Li naf bihom jien darbtej li missieri ġifieri prova jtem ħajtu. U naf, ovvjament naf ħafna nies li kolhom daw il-momenti stess għandi l-kundizzjonijiet tiegħi, ġifieri mhux faċli, però fid-dinja tal-lum li qed nifhmuhom iktar l-affarijiet naħseb huma ħafna iktar aċċettabbli u hemm ħafna iktar għarfien u hemm ħafna iktar għodot li wieħed jista' isib biex il-qagħda tiegħu spiex ta' jmexxiha l qudiem.
Il-ħobża tal-Malti, il-ħobża tal-Maltin, minant il-Maypole.
Ġejjin għatli, on days at the end of the day, I sit down and I write down if today was more bipolar than other days.
If I said write down, definitely not the case. I don't
Or I think.
I
think I project
I don't even.
write.
It doesn't even get to the end of the day usually. Like every couple of hours I'll do it, but at the end of the day, and I am.
Tamel audit ta' kif
mostly
l-imġiba.
everything, eżatt. L-imġiba from the small things to ġifieri enough how I presented myself at the office, how I came in, how I sat down, did I speak to people enough, did I interact with people
Must
enough.
be very tiring.
That's what people tell me, and it's really entertaining actually, because in my head I can always optimize. So for example, if I'm seeing people around me being stressed and doing them a coffee, suddenly give them a smile, I'm like, the barrier to entry for that person's 1% betterness like costs me nothing.
Yeah.
So in my head.
That caring part fil-fatt innu tajta Edwarek.
But kif tajt, it's not something, I don't call it caring. I just, I'm lazy, right? And I will still be lazy even when I care for you. So if I just went for a coffee and I grabbed another one, you tell me exactly how much more energy I've expanded.
Ma dak il-ħin inti taraħ fis-sens inkunu qegħdin taf li daw l-aħħar ġimgħat kienu
for me it's nothing, for you it's something.
Daħna.
And for me that's a good trade-off. But these are the I call these microtransactions, like, and I do thousands of them, at least I try to, where if my 2 minutes benefits you 20 minutes, I'm going to be hard pressed not to do that thing. And people are going to find it very difficult to convince me. Why? Because if I've done that 10 times in a day, you tell me how much better the world is. Not the world, like I'm helping the world, but that person, if I've helped you, then in my eyes, I've helped change your life slowly, not change your life. So these microtransactions, this little helping, is super efficient. Very, very, very. Like if you put me in a team, I will never shine. Never. Like my job, those around me. Why? Because if 5 people are working better than 1, even on my best day, I cannot compete with them. On my best day where I'm super focused, I cannot touch the shoes of 5 people working properly. So these microtransactions, one, they help with interactions with people. I'm a bit weird sometimes, like I'm very direct. But in general, they invite people then to speak to you as well. So I see it as quite a really good thing. Like, and it's really easy. That's the funny thing. Like, I'll end up getting a reward for the most caring person, and I'll be like, can I get it from a video call? But like, so is it?
So she wasn't wrong, Gabby, that you're caring.
Like I said, I don't like it, but because caring means that someone's doing an effort, we have to stop it. Like, we can do it all day, almost all the time. Like if I'm going there, but like that's it, a day, like all day with everyone. If I know that someone's going to the coffee hop at Sokkor, anything.
Teħlilu, biex teħlilek. Lejna, moħħi mamul differenti ovvjament minn tiegħek. Għandu bħalma għandu tajt, intu taħdem miegħi għandu l-sfumaturi jew l-idiosinkrazziji tiegħu. It's peculiarities. Its own peculiarities. Jiena moħħi dejjem nimmaġinaħ isu hard disk. Ek nimmaġinaħ moħħi meta kolli not naħseb fuq kif jaħdem moħħi.
The analogy is starting well as a hard drive.
Like a hard drive that starts spinning slowly, then it catches. Imma, taħxini, jekk inkunu qed nitkellmu fuq jinnaf, fuq il-żieda fl-income tax, per eżempju, teoretikament, ma nafx wara l-budget jole. Qed nitkellmu fuq l-overpopulation. U qed naħseb sew fuq l-overpopulation u qed nħaffer u l-hard disk dur. Jekk jidħol xi ħadd fil-kamra jgħidli isma' aħna il-kont ta' dawl ħallasnieh, il-hard disk tagħmel inħoss, moħħi jingiref.
Ma nafx il-hard disk u x'qed tagħmel
l-analogija. Issa, mbagħad meta nħares lura f'ħajti ninduna li ħafna drabi kon nispiċċa ħafna nkwiet. Kon ngħid men kif il-Madonna spiċċajtaw. Għax kont nitlef kontroll, qed tifhem? Għax mbagħad la darba dil-analogija tal-hard disk, la darba dil-hard disk titlef kontroll, u mbagħad tmur mhux skont fejn nibda nidderriġi jien, imma skont l-impuls. Mela, jekk jiena sambat jekk jiena visceralment għandi aptit nixrob, mela m'għandix kontroll. Nitlef kompletament il-kontroll li ngħid le mhux se nixrob, le mhux se nagħmel vizzi oħrajn li naf li mhux suppost qiegħed nipparteċipa fihom. Allura biżmien sirt naħseb ħafna iktar iddixxiplinat għax naf li l-konsegwenzi tan-nuqqas ta' dixxiplina almenu f'ħajti mhux għal kulħadd, imma f'ħajti huma mhumiex tajbin, veru maħżien.
So this comes from all the way there. Because to me, for example, they're super separate. Like for me to control and store my destination, pause and continue the thought is super completely different set of skills that I need to use to not take drugs, for example. Why? To not take drugs, I need to find meaning in my life. I need to find things to do. To concentrate, I need to know. For me, what works is I start from the end because that's how I get interested. And then I work my way backwards. So like they teach at school, but the opposite. Exactly.
You start from the end and then reverse engineer.
Exactly. Because I don't get till the bottom, that's useless for me, right? Like there are computers that can do that. Like don't waste my brain power on things that are automated. So when I see that, in fact, I get very interested in saying, how does he manage to do so many things working like this? Like, it is crazy. When I'm at a computer...
So if you see people like, for example, rajtu il-biografija ta' Elon Musk.
I have not.
Okay, so mela, forget Elon Musk for a second.
I do.
There's a great biographer ismu Walter Isaacson. So Walter Isaacson għal min iħobb il-biografiji huwa l-aqwa għalija biografu ta' din il-ġenerazzjoni, għamel ta' Musk, għamel ta' Jobs, u għamel ukoll per eżempju ta' Thomas Jefferson. Mil-records tiegħu, mid-diaries tiegħu, fantastic writer. Anyway, so da l-ostja Walter Isaacson għatta diversi snin ma' Musk. Bħal ħafna nies li huma li jibrillaw Musk huwa moħħ sew minn moħħu u moħħ sew minn tfulitu. Ġifieri kellu missieru li kien erratiku u violenti u dawn l-affarijiet kollha u biex baqa' b'dik it-trauma u b'daqqa dejjem biex jirrispondi lejn id-dinja minn dak in-nuqqasijiet, allura dejjem he needed to juri d-dinja li kemm hu kbir u kapaċi u bravo, eċetera, eċetera. Però Musk mbagħad sirt naf li jekk jaħdem, ġifieri Musk
Like that?
Ġifieri Musk tidħol u bdejna nitkellmu, bdejna
What does
nitkellmu.
that mean li jaħdem hekk Musk? Fis-sens, Musk has to come up with solutions of how to get a rocket engine out of space 1 degree less when it's out of the atmosphere. Fis-sens, even if I had to do that, would work like that. But when it's doing other things, for example, for me, I chop it up.
So let's say I'm writing Kaxxaturi, right? Let's say I'm writing Kaxxaturi or something like it. It's like if you guys, if I have to think, all right, I have to make it, like every line has to make sense. It has to make sense in the story. It has to be easy to understand.
There it's different.
It has to be
There,
funny.
It's not just the final, it's the direction,
And
how
what
you're
the
getting
fuck,
there.
and what's the picture that goes with this, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
does the picture change? And
That
that is
for
for
sure.
every 5 seconds, right? So anyway, and that's just how I train myself. That I work in just blocks. Ħalli mbagħad ukoll, imma mbagħad jekk pereżempju mmur id-dar u pereżempju għadha l-birthday tat-tifla. Allura dawk 6 sigħat, 8 sigħat, whatever li ħanamel mat-tifla ma naf fejn ħad toħodni. U mbagħad hemmhekk, that is just purely that. So anyway, that's how I've kind of
Interessanti.
trained my computer. Ħanalqu bl-istqarrija tiegħek fuq
Il-Malti, naħseb ħafna nies indunaw li għandek il-ċaħat jaħdem ġdid miegħek, għax
Għalfejn?
bdew jaqraw l-spelling tiegħi. U
Le,
kif sirt naf-
l-ortografija tal-ħara wkoll tal-li
Le, mux tiegħek.
li manka tiegħi hija
Aħna
tal-ħara u
tiegħek,
jgħidu li ħafna fuqha.
Imma, ara, jiena
Kultant
vera
ingaġġaw
nemmen-
l-spell checkers.
Jiena nemmen li di vera xi ħaġa li ħaġġel il-Malti bati, fis-sens. There's a generation coming up sowa.
Yeah.
They are on their phones, on their emails using English all day. U jekk dan nies qed iħossuhom awkward jitkellmu ma' xi ħadd bil-Malti għax nikdbilhom xi ħaġa u jagħmlu li exclamation mark hekk. Inti toqtol il-Malti, hemm se jiena pereżempju nitkellem bil-Malti. So
Sewa.
my first language is Maltese imma nitkellem bl-Ingliż ukoll. Jekk tara jiena nikteb bil-Malti u tara toddler jikteb bil-Malti, l-unika raġun li ħataraf tiegħi u għax hemm il-kliem sewwa, għax hemm ġifieri it-tri. Il-bqija ma nafx. Dal-aħħar speċjalment bdejt niskopri tant hemm kliem li dejjem spellejthom ħażin ovvjament fuq messages u issa letteralment minħabba di isa l-erdu dejjem sew. It's sad, għax naħseb li għalkemm maħniex ħanet nifqu nitkellmu żgur, ma jekk irridu nżommu ukoll bil-kidba u dawn in-nies u mal-aħjar nies li jagħmlu hekk sewwa mhux jien. Isu l-approach naħseb għandu jkun naqra iktar kif nagħmlu b'ċertu affarijiet bħal mediċina, you sweeten it up a bit, taf kif.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to have it perfect, but if there's no second option for you, guess who's going to win? Your society. And I am willing to bet that the current will win. And it's
What's your bet? Ġifieri li l-Malti jintelef?
within 10 years, mux li l-sien, dak jibqa jitkellem, żgur. Għax
Mala darba tiqaf tikbu
ħajkun hemm naqra distortions, ux vera.
mhux biss distortions, ġifieri inti jekk tiqaf ma fil-fema tiegħi, jekk inti tiqaf tagħmel affarijiet li huma jew kulturalment relevanti, sewa li tikteb il-kodba, tikteb id-diski, tikteb il-films u dawn l-affarijiet. Jew jekk tiqaf tagħmel lik. U jekk il-Malti jaqaf ikollu utilità, ikollu dejjem inqas utilità. Sewa, eventwalment meta inti tibda tagħmel titfal affarijiet fil-miżin tajt jien jaqbilli ninvesti fl-Ingliż,
Infatti,
fl-Ingliż nista'
Issa jien bħala lingwa nippreferi nitkellem bil-Malti, nista' nkun ħafna iktar animat, m'għandix il-vokabularju li għandi bl-Ingliż. Laqqas jiġifieri naħseb 1/3. Imma hekk, ma nafx, meta titkellmu hemm naqra emozzjoni l-fuq l-isfel rabja mhux rabja.
ħafna iktar autentiku. Meta aħna nitkellmu l-Malti ħafna iktar autentiku.
Eżatt.
Jien ħossni vera stramp meta per kellu podcast ta' Trudi anke issa tkellim naqra bl-Ingliż. Inħossni vera stramp nitkellem bl-Ingliż fuq ix-xandir għax ma laqqas naf li maċċent għandi nuża u jekk mbagħad nibda naħseb imma dal-aċċent jagħmel sens qed nistema' tan-nejk, qed nistema' asnaf taf kif vera nintilef għal l-identità tiegħi vis-à-vis meta nibda nitkellem bl-Ingliż speċa suppost x'inhu l-ħoss li suppost ħeres minn ħalli. Whereas li bil-Malti speċa hija xi ħaġa ovvja, speċa minn dejjem tkellimtu l-interazzjoni tiegħi b'raħa ġdida tal-most.
Għaw min jaħseb bil-Malti, għaw minn bl-Ingliż, titmitnejn.
Le, mbagħad naħseb naqa bl-Ingliż, ma naħseb peress li naqra ħafna u smajt ħafna mużika u rajt
ċertu sentenzi jiġu f'daqqa u tiġi bl-Ingliż forsi bħala sentenza.
Imma diki għax moħħi hemm dal-Ingliż Amerikan ta' Harvard li kol kien li trabba l-Bronx hekk f'moħħi. Qed tifhem għandi dan il-leħen illi huwa speċa il-ġon ideali li kieku jitkellem bl-Ingliż. Imma naf li ma jeżistix, qed tifhemni. Allura mbagħad meta nipprova nitrasmettih fid-dinja naf li huwa carbon copy tan-nejk ta' dak li jiena nimmaġna li jiena nistema' bħalu bl-Ingliż.
Ma naħsebx li qatt ħsibt fuq kif ninstema' jiena. U fis-sens ġieli nismani f'ċertu postijiet, mhux hekk, u mbagħad imbur, hija.
Le, imma jinġrat li jiex.
Imma l-problema x'tista' tagħmel fuqha, għax jien qatt ma provajt inbiddel aċċett.
Le, mbagħad taċċettaw Le, fakit. Naħseb semmek tista' tasal. Imma jien speċa kien li dal-mument ta' realizzazzjoni meta kont għamilt ma nafx kemm il-mitzi għan rekordi għal-podcast. U mbagħad kelli l-Matthew Caruana Galizja. U Matthew jipreferi jitkellem bl-Ingliż. U qed nkellmu bl-Ingliż. U qed ngħid tajt qed nistema' tan-nejk. Għax biex jiena l-Ingliż kif nismani f'moħħi qed nitkellmu naf li mhuwiex il-mod kif mbagħad ngħidu kif illisnu. U naf li bdejt ninkwita li nistema' naqa' isni qed nirreċna u qed nisforza u dawn l-affarijiet. U mhux tajjeb, jiġifieri inti waqt tkun qed tagħmel intervista xi ħadd, partikolarment intervista xi ħadd importanti bħal dik ta' ma' Matthew kienet ftit ta' distrazzjoni, għalkemm ġifieri irnexxieli nelba.
Naf li irnexxielek għax dak kien żgur wieħed mill-tal-bidu li niftakar nara going.
L-ewwel podcast għal-qalbi ħafna, ġifieri ma l-ewwel 6 minuti x'inbejt nisma' li nnifsi bl-Ingliż fuq il-mikrofon. Ħatqata. U ma realizzajx li ħanħodha dik il-qata insomma. Ma isma' fuq dik in-nota hemm xi ħaġa tixtieq iżid qabel ma nagħlqu.
Xejn. L-esperjenza tajba naħseb narak mhux għada issa ma piet għada.
Le, għada niltaqgħu. Ma għada niltaqgħu għala le.
Mhux intat il-birthday ta' Sofi għada.
Le, ma dak jibda fit-tlieta.
Okay.
Le, għada fis-7 qed nkun il-Calypso, fit-8 allura d-dar, fid-9 l-bank. Mbagħad aħna għandna meeting tal-marketing. Mhux, marketing, production. Mbagħad fit-tlieta rridu niffilmjaw dawk il-filmati iż-żgħar. Mbagħad fit-tlieta mur chips ċangis.
Proset tal-programm.
Robert Gruppetta, grazzi tal-li għaxbok tidħol magħna għal din l-avventura. Kif kienet li tħall fid-dinja tal-medja, di u nagħlqu?
Very different to what I'm used to. Mhux għax iktar fast, għax iktar changes. Issa jiena bniedem li sħaba ħajajruni ipokrita, għax I like change u minn ma jbiddilx ngħidilhom ħafna biex iżommu f'moħħhom dejjem opportunity cost. Ġifieri yes, there are some costs li ġieli tagħmel żbalji tibżax tbiddel. Ġifieri jiena studjajt biology u chemistry meta kont żgħir, ħafna nies għamlu għadi, mbagħad mort fuq banking and whatever. Even on a day-to-day basis, things I do, I change very easily. Why? they can be optimized always. So
Eżatt.
yeah, like the media industry is great because it really gives you a chance to optimize, but it really gives you a chance to fall on your face. So fast, I'm used to and like. Changing, not used to. I like. Gonna get better at it for sure, but so far so good.
Mela, grazzi Robert Gruppetta, grazzi nittama li sibtu ta' interess din il-konversazzjoni, xnaqt li speċa nesploraw xini id-dinja skont xaħat li fost kweċ oħrajn ukoll għandu l-kondizjoni ta' bipolar, ovvjament dinja li tkellmu dwar l-lum l-esperjenza unika għal Robert, għax Robert mhux biss person li għandu bipolar, ma għandu l-bipolarity u ma nafx eżatt tissejjaħ id-diagnosi, però huwa bniedem li għandu ħafna interessi oħrajn, għandu ħafna aspirazzjonijiet oħrajn, għandu ħafna għandu sfond kulturali tiegħu. Ġifieri llum xtaqt illi tkun esplorazzjoni ta' moħħ jew ta' persuna illi din id-diagnosi u kuljum jinnegozja id-dinja bil-mod li fehmu u forsi minn dik l-istorja kollha slitna it-talim li kellna bżonn nisiltu minnhom kull wieħed waħda minnha. Mela, grazzi ħafna Robert, grazzi lkom tal-segwejtuni, narakom id-dieħla. Mela, tlaqna?